Hey guys, what an honor and a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I would have loved to, other than the weather and all the stuff we're seeing in the news. But hey, Florida will do too. So thank you guys for coming out. You may know I'm a big time creationist. I was duped into the evolution cult for the first 20 years of my life. And the first time somebody asked me if I thought evolution might not be real, I laughed in their face, but then, had to eat some humble pie, eat some crow. So I'm grateful to organizations like yours that are doing the hard work of showing people that the evidence actually supports the biblical account of creation. So thank you for that. I was asked to speak today about transhumanism. I think it's a really important topic. In fact, this may be one of the most important topics ever in the history of humanity. And I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. Before we even start, I'll say I don't think these evildoers are going to succeed in what they're trying to do. Right, and we'll get into what they're trying to do. It's more than just upgrade themselves technologically. We're really talking about things here that have profound implications from a biblical perspective and also from a creation perspective. We're talking about manipulating the fundamental genetic code that God wrote for each of us as individuals. We're talking about altering creation in a way that I think really should be beyond the purview of mankind. So, with that little introduction, we'll go ahead and get started. Um, some of you probably remember COVID, I would imagine. We were here in Florida, so thankfully we didn't have a lot of that tyranny. In fact, we didn't have any mask mandates or any of that crazy stuff. No vaccine mandates, no lockdowns, no nothing. But I know Minnesota was a little bit different. But you may have not seen the announcement of the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, came together with a bunch of his little friends. The head of the UN, the head of the IMF, senior leader of the Chinese Communist Party, a whole bunch of bigwigs, and they announced that because of COVID, we were going to need this new system called the Great Reset. And a critical part of the Great Reset is what we're going to focus on today, and that's the fourth industrial revolution. So I'll let Klaus Schwab introduce it before we get into it.
We ought to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives. In short, we need a great reset.
Yes, we need a great reset. And did you notice what he said about the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution? That's really what we're going to dig into here. Now, he's written books about this. When he's talking about the fourth industrial revolution, he's talking about a combination of different technologies, including AI, genetic engineering, robotics, quantum computing, the Internet of Things, which eventually will lead to the Internet of Bodies. We're not going to get into all this in depth, but nanotech, nano robots, and also synthetic biology, which we will touch on a little bit today. And I'll start by pointing out that the implications of this for freedom and privacy are enormous. They are quite literally talking about erasing privacy in the most fundamental sense, as we'll see as we go through here. But they're starting off with the creation of what I call a digital gulag. They prefer the term digital public infrastructure. Now, during COVID, you might remember the idea of vaccine passports. Now, I don't know if Minnesota ended up implementing those, but some states did, many countries did. You could not go to a grocery store in some countries without your vaccine passport. Then eventually you needed all your boosters, and I think they stopped recommending them at booster 14, no exaggeration. And eventually all this will be rolled into what they call the social credit score. So it won't just be keeping track of whether you got all your boosters. It'll also be, what do you say on social media? Who are you friends with? Do you pay your mortgage? Have you ever donated at a conservative Bible-believing church? Have you ever donated to a political candidate that we don't like, et cetera, et cetera? Now, it's interesting because they were plotting vaccine passports long before anybody ever heard of a COVID. Here's a 2018 study in the National Library of Medicine about how they could use vaccine passports. Here's a 2019 document from the European Union where they said, this was May of 2019, by the way, 6 months, 8 months before anybody ever heard of a COVID. They said that by 2022, all Europeans should be carrying universal vaccine passports that would keep track of all their vaccine status. And of course, they're rolling that out now, the UVABECO project, where everybody will have their not just COVID vaccines and boosters, but all of their government demanded vaccines. And Lest you think that this is just for the Europeans, this is coming, it's going global as we speak. Now, here's the head of, I call it the World Homicide Organization. I think they prefer to be known as the World Health Organization. But here's their leader, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who literally was a member of the Politburo, the Central Committee of a mass murdering ethno-Marxist terrorist organization in his homeland of Ethiopia. But listen to this.
WHO is proud today to launch the Global Digital Health Certification Network. So thank you so much to European Union for the excellent certification system that you have transferred to us, and we have the chance to build on it. WHO will begin operations of the network today with the existing COVID-19 certificate as a global public good. Soon after, we will expand this infrastructure by incorporating other use, such as a digitized international certificate of vaccination, routine immunization cards, and
Okay, so they're using the EU model for the globe.
Patient summaries.
So there you have it, right? We're going to have a global vaccine system that's going to keep track of everybody's vaccines. And of course, it won't be just vaccines, right? And for those of you thinking that maybe you don't need a vaccine passport because maybe you don't need to travel internationally, they're already rolling out the digital ID, which will be the companion of this. This is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom just a few weeks ago.
Today, I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
As simple as that, okay? You will not work in the United Kingdom unless you have a digital ID. Now, the official excuse there is to control illegal immigration, which is quite silly. When they first proposed this in 2010 in the United States, they had a bipartisan Senate bill. They were actually going to pair it with amnesty for illegal immigrants. So nothing to do with immigration, everything to do with having a digital profile on you that will keep track of all your data. The EU is going ahead with a digital ID and a personal digital wallet for all EU citizens. And of course, that will also be paired with a digital currency where the Bank for International Settlements is coordinating this at the international level. Now, the head of the Bank for International Settlements, the general manager, Agustin Cartens, had some interesting things to say about this. Here he is.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are our.
So you heard him. They will have the technology to enforce this. They will have, he said, absolute control over the use of these central bank digital currencies. Yes, they will be programmable. I'll show you some examples of leading officials talking about this. He also made clear that there will be no more privacy, right? Right now, you can walk into a store and pay with a $100 bill and nobody knows but you and the shopkeeper. By the time this is done, every single transaction will be monitored, controlled, approved by the government and the big banks. And, of course, tracked, data mined, and eventually, like I said, your currency will be programmable so that you can't spend it on things that your overlords don't want you to spend it on. Here is an Ivy League professor in the United States bragging about this at the World Economic Forum.
If you think about the benefits of digital money, there are huge potential gains. It's not just about digital forms of physical currency. You can have programmability, units of central bank currency with expiry dates. You could have, as I argue in my book, a potentially better and some people might see it, or a darker world where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of the sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC.
All right, so we'll be able to decide what you can buy, if you can buy, when you can buy, how you can buy. And, they're talking about guns and ammunition and things like that. But next it'll be, tithing at a Bible-believing church, donating to creation ministries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is openly pushing this idea as well.
Potential value for everyone to use it. And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program.
To program. And of course, that's exactly what they're going to do, right?
Those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized.
It's also going to be used to monitor your carbon footprint and force you to make better choices.
But very, very specific. This specific brand, even the specific batch of this, if we link that with, AI technology and then big data and particularly Internet of Things, there are ways for us to come up with instant measurement and reporting of the carbon footprint. I hope that through this we can help people to really make different choices.
Yeah, they're going to help people make different choices, right? And yes, they're talking about you. But I want to show you guys Agustin Cartens again, because what's going to happen if these totalitarians get their way is they're going to integrate this digital currency and this digital ID into what they're calling the international blockchain ledger. And this international blockchain ledger will basically involve the tokenization of every asset in the known universe, every car, every toothbrush, every stock, every bond, every farm, every house, everything. And it will exist as a digital token on this blockchain ledger. And using digital contracts with your digital ID and your digital currency, you'll be able to trade that, and that will then exist permanently on this digital ledger. Here is Mr. Cartens at the Bank for International Settlements talking about this system.
Around the world, central banks are exploring how to give money new capabilities. The BIS is supporting much of this work as it incubates projects and catalyzes new ideas in the world of central banking. This includes work on central bank digital currencies at both wholesale and retail levels, as well as fast payment systems and their interlinkages across borders. We're also experimenting with the tokenization of different assets, including tokenized deposits. But to fully realize the transformative potential of this new financial technology, we need some way to bring them all together. In this regard, there is a great promise in developing the idea of a unified ledger with a common programming environment. A unified ledger is a digital infrastructure with the potential to combine the monetary system with other registries of real and financial claims. It would need to be a public-private partnership with clear division of roles and where the
So that's essentially where they're going. I know that guy's kind of boring and hard to listen to, but you get a sense of where they're going, right? All assets will exist on this digital blockchain ledger. Now, obviously, this is not a lecture on prophecy or eschatology or anything of the sort, but 2,000 years ago, when John wrote the book of Revelation, it must have sounded, I think, rather silly, this idea that there was going to be some power that was going to be able to cause every person in the world, small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man may be able to buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the number of the beast, or the number of his, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. People probably thought, oh, that's funny, John. Yeah, right. Some global system, totalitarian regime is going to be able to enforce something like that. And yet right now we're watching the architecture for just such a system coming into view. They actually tell you in the Financial Times, one of the leading establishment mouthpieces, they say CBDC research and experimentation shows it's going to be nigh on impossible to issue these digital currencies outside of a comprehensive national digital ID management system. Meaning, they say, CBDCs are going to be tied to personal accounts that include personal data, credit history, and other forms of relevant information. The World Economic Forum has been pushing this for many years. The digital ID has been underway for well over a decade. The ID 2020, they launched this over a decade ago. Partnership of Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the vaccine nuts at Gavi, and others. And by the way, it's coming here, right? We've got numerous states. About half of American states right now are working on digital ID, and the digital currency is being developed in 98% of countries around the world. It's on temporary pause right now, but basically they're trying to turn the private cryptocurrencies into the equivalent of a central bank digital currency. And ultimately, you will need this digital ID. You will need the digital currency to be able to do anything, as they themselves are saying. Here's the Queen of the Netherlands at the World Economic Forum talking about this, how they're going to enforce it on you.
Why? Because in order to open an account, you need to have an ID.
Right.
And I have to say that when I started this job, there were actually very little countries in Africa or Latin America that had one ubiquitous type of ID, and certainly that it was digital, and certainly that it was biometric. And we've really worked with all our partners to actually help that being, to grow this. And the interesting part of it is that, yes, it is very necessary for financial services, but not only.
So
it's also good for school enrollment. It's also good for health, who actually got a vaccination or not. It's very good to get your subsidies, from the government. So this has not only effect to the financial services. It's a very important issue.
Yeah, so you'll need it for school, for healthcare, for financial services. Basically, if you want to operate in this life, you will have a digital ID, you will use a digital currency, and you will be happy. Now, eventually, and this is already coming into view, it's not just going to be a digital thing on your smartphone or whatever. Eventually, it's going to go under your skin. Okay, here's Yuval Noah Harari. We're going to meet Yuval several times today. He is basically the evil sidekick of Klaus Schwab. If Klaus Schwab was Batman, Yuval Noah Harari is Robin. And here he is talking during COVID about where they think this is going.
Maybe in a couple of decades, when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin.
When surveillance started going under the skin, okay? And that's where we're going to move into some more troubling stuff. They're already marketing this, by the way, to the regular lemmings. This is NBC fake news.
When Elias Brotberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID. And he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
You like to touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, a grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all on chip, so I use it like to get around the building.
Buy snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's buy some snacks. Exactly. So I can't open it.
So anyways, you get the idea. Your digital ID, your digital money, all of it, your digital keys, all right in a little microchip embedded under your skin. Now, there are already thousands of lemmings in human form walking around Sweden with microchips in their hands. Watch.
Implants are a very versatile technology that can be used for many different things. And right now, it's very convenient to have a COVID passport always accessible on your implant.
Yeah, very convenient, right? And of course, this is where they're going with this, and they've gotten more and more open about it. And right now it's optional. You can use digital money or you can use cash, but eventually they intend to phase out cash. So back in 2012, the Better Than Cash Alliance was launched. They said right on their website, it's a global partnership committed to moving from cash to digital payments in order to, word salad meaning nothing, right? Reduce poverty and drive inclusive growth, whatever that means. Here's some of the partners in this movement. The credit card companies, mass murdering communist dictatorships, the Clintons, Bill Gates of hell, and of course his buddy Epstein. So these are the people who think you need to give up your cash and give up your privacy. If you remember during COVID, they were really pushing this hard. You're going to get COVID from your cash, give up your cash. And now Bill Gates also has an interesting cryptocurrency system When I first heard about this, I didn't believe it. I had to go to the World Intellectual Property Organization's website and look it up. The patent number is WO 2020-060606, and it's a system that goes in your body and distributes your cryptocurrency based on your body activities. So let's go back to this fourth industrial revolution that we started with. Klaus Schwab has a book about it, and even before he wrote his book, he wrote about it in the magazine Foreign Affairs, which is basically the mouthpiece of the global establishment. And he says this fourth industrial revolution is not going to just change what we are doing, but also who we are. He says these revolutions in biotech and AI are going to redefine what it means to be human, and they're going to force us to redefine our moral and ethical boundaries. And so there's two options, basically. He says there's the pessimistic, dehumanized form, where the fourth industrial revolution is going to robotize humanity and deprive us of our heart and soul, which, that sounds rather unpleasant. But don't worry, there's another option, and that is, as a complement to the best parts of human nature, it's going to lift humanity into a new collective and moral consciousness based on a shared sense of destiny. So we're going to dig into this fourth industrial revolution in a major way. But first, here's Klaus Schwab giving a one-sentence summary of what he thinks this is all about.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
A fusion of our physical and our digital and our biological identities. All right, so what does that actually mean? Well, first of all, support from the highest levels of power in the United States. You guys probably recognize this guy.
I've written extensively on the topic that you've asked me to speak to, mastering the fourth industrial revolution.
Yes, we're going to master the fourth industrial revolution. So in September of 2022, Joe Biden signed an executive order, and I'm quoting from this. He says, we need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. Unlock the power of biological data, including through computing tools and AI, and advance the science of scale-up production. So this is what they're telling you they're doing. Right. So let's go to Klaus Schwab's book on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's called Shaping the Future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And he says these technologies, they're not going to stop it becoming part of the physical world around us. He says they're going to become part of us. He says today's external devices, like your wearable computers and virtual reality headsets, will almost certainly become implantable in our bodies and in our brains. Here he is talking about this on Swiss television literally a decade ago.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
So direct communication between our brains and the digital world. And he talks about it in his book. He says these implantable devices will help us communicate thoughts expressed verbally through a built-in smartphone, even potentially unexpressed thoughts or moods by reading brain waves and other signals. And by the way, this is already here. And one of the great things about all this, he says, is we don't need elections anymore, right? Because we'll be able to know what you citizens would like anyway. So we don't need to have elections.
And digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
Yes, why do we need elections? We know what the result will be. Okay. And he actually talks about it in his book about how, as these capabilities include, governments might even start requiring us to submit to detailed brain scans to assess whether we are a security risk. Now, I know a lot of this sounds like bad science fiction, but they've been working on this stuff for well over 50 years. If you go back to the 1960s, they figured out how to remote control the brains of monkeys and bulls, and they talked about it on television.
Electronic mind control research is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain.
So fast forward to 2017, Rockefeller University put out a press release where they said, get ready your tinfoil hats. Mind control is not as far-fetched an idea as it may seem. In Jeffrey Friedman's laboratory, it happens all the time, though the subjects are mice, not people. And they said that this program to control the minds of these mice involves a green fluorescent protein that they get from a jellyfish, an antibody from camels, squishy bags of iron particles, the cellular equivalent of a door. And they say this is all delivered and installed by a genetically engineered virus. Where have we heard of genetically engineered viruses before? And they said Friedman's team realized they could use this genetically engineered virus to create doorways into a neuron's outer membrane, and then they could do what they wanted. Now, we've already seen the merger of human beings and some of these technologies at the World Government Summit 6 years ago. They had a cyborg talk about his transhumanist or transspecies society.
We call it the transspecies societies because we are adding senses and organs that are not traditionally human. In my case, the definition of human no longer defines me 100%, so I don't feel human 100% because there's an organ, an antenna, which is not typically human, and I have infrared and ultraviolet perception, which is not typically human. So the definition of human no longer defines me. That's why I feel more comfortable defining myself as a trans species, because
He's trans species, okay? Now, they already have these Neuralinks installed in people's brains, but even years ago, Elon Musk was bragging about this. And again, this is before they started actually putting them in the brains of human beings, but check this out.
So going into the Neuralink architecture, what we've done over the past year is dramatically simplify the device. So we about a year ago, we had a device which had multiple parts, including a piece that had to sort of sit behind your ear, and it was complex, and you wouldn't still look totally normal. You'd have a thing behind your ear. So we've simplified this to simply something that is about the size of a large coin, and it goes in your skull, replaces a piece of skull, and the wires then connect within a few centimeters or about an inch away from the device.
Anyways, continuing, it talks about how they read the brain waves, and then they're able to even predict where the muscles and joints
Showing
will
an
be.
accumulation of neural spikes in that region. So, in terms of additional brain reading activity, when we have, say, one of our pigs on a treadmill, pig on a treadmill, it's a funny concept, really, and we take the readings from the neurons, and we try to predict the position of the joints, and so we have the predicted position of the joints, and then we measure the actual position of the joints. You can see that they're almost exactly aligned. So we're able, with a wireless neural implant, to actually predict the position of all of the limbs.
There you go. And then they talk about writing on the brain as well.
Now, in terms of writing to the brain or stimulating neurons, we also need precise control of the electric field in space and time. We need a wide range of current for different brain regions. Some regions require delicate stimulation, some require a lot of current. And you want, obviously, no harm to the brain over time.
And anyways, over the long term, we're eventually going to merge with AI, Elon Musk says, or at least some of us will. Listen.
This will be a slow process where we will gradually increase the issues that we solve until ultimately we can do a full brain-machine interface, meaning that we can ultimately, this is going to sound pretty weird, but achieve a sort of symbiosis with artificial intelligence. So but this is not a mandatory thing. This is a thing that you can choose to have if you want. And this is something I think that's going to be really important at a civilization level scale. So, and I've said a lot about AI over the years, but I think even in a benign AI scenario, we will be left behind. And so, and hopefully it is a benign scenario, but I think with a high bandwidth brain-machine interface, I think we can actually go along for the ride. And we can effectively have the option of merging with AI. I think this is extremely important.
Yeah, so we're going to merge with AI, okay? And previously he talked about AI as summoning a demon, so make of that what you will. You may have heard of Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, right? We're all going to live in the metaverse, and so instead of having to travel, we'll just, go into the metaverse. You get to be an avatar in there. So I looked it up. Turns out it's a Hindu concept, which means the material appearance or incarnation of a deity on Earth. But just so that everybody understands the full implications of what these people are talking about, we're going to go back to Yuval Noah Harari and let him explain.
We need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which humans are now hackable animals. The whole idea that humans have, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
That's over. Okay, hackable animals. Don't get any ideas about choosing what you want at the supermarket or in your elections. Like, that's over. You have no spirit. You have no soul. You are a hackable animal. And your overlords have determined that they will make your choices for you. And by the way, this is like getting mainstream, right? I doubt a lot of you watch 60 Minutes or the Communist News. I mean, this is CNN, whatever. But here they are talking about this, like right in the open, like it's no big deal.
We'll soon have the power to re-engineer our bodies and brains, whether it is with genetic engineering or by directly connecting brains to computers or by creating completely non-organic entities, artificial intelligence, which is not based at all on the organic body and the organic brain. And these technologies are developing at breakneck speed.
If that is true, then it creates a whole other species.
This is something which is way beyond just another species.
Yuval Noah Harari is talking about the race to develop art.
Anyways, here's the chief of engineering at Google talking about the same thing. You're going to merge, your brain is going to merge with AI.
Even though this is not inside my body and brain today, that's an arbitrary distinction. This is an expansion of my intelligence. I'm smarter because of all these resources we have. I felt that part of my brain went on strike during that one-day SOPA strike. And I think that's going to be the wave of the future. It's going to be very widely integrated. We're going to merge. We are merging with this intelligent technology that we're creating. We'll get to a point within 40 years or so where we can really back up who we are. In fact, we will increasingly become non-biological. Our thinking will be a hybrid of our biological brains with a non-biological extension in the cloud.
Yeah. So I know what some of you are thinking, well, I'm never going to merge with AI. I'm never going to put that junk in my brain. I'm never going to let them edit my genetic code. They don't necessarily need your consent. They are targeting your children, and they're doing it very openly. A lot of you have probably heard of the BBC, the British government's propaganda service. They do fake news. They do propaganda entertainment, where they kind of groom people and condition people to embrace the next big thing. And one of the shows they did recently was called Years and Years. You see the little girl here. She is the main character in the show. Her name is Bethany. And she's trying to explain to her troglodyte parents how wonderful it is to be a transhuman. But they're just too old-fashioned. They just don't get it.
Do you see? These are interaction nodes. If I use this finger, I can open all the doors at work, no ID. And if I just scan this, in the shop. I can pay for anything up to £1,000. And look, Dad, Mom, I've just taken your photo. Send and send. It doesn't need the sound effect. I just added that because it makes me laugh.
Yeah, and it gets better. Microchip in the brain. Check it out.
What about your head? Can't feel a thing. They inserted the tiniest wafer into my brain. And, oh my God, look at the result. Synced us up. No keyboard. I don't need a keyboard ever again.
You did that by thinking?
It can't read my mind. Not yet, but the wafer tracks activity in the neural pathway and micro movements in the retina to predict what I'm thinking.
But that is reading your mind.
Let's see where everyone is.
And then, you thought drugs were a big threat. That's what kids were after. Look at how great this transhumanism is. Watch.
So why do you need the operation?
I'm trying to explain it in ways you can understand, but the connection is so much more. While we were talking, at exactly the same time, I wondered about the 80 days of rain, where it came from, why it was, what comes next. Keyed into satellites just 30 seconds ago, so I can see the course of El Nino, and I can tap into pressure sensors along the Atlantic coast and barometric readings from the ships at sea. If I put all of that together, I'm there. I'm inside it, the tide, the depth of the sea, and the curl of the waves within me. And right now in Charles Street, Pasadena, a 15-year-old girl called Effany Cross has written her first song and put it online, and she's got the sweetest voice. So when I combine all of that, it's joy. In my head, it is absolute joy.
It is absolute joy to be a transhuman, okay? They're grooming your children for this at school, and there's a very serious occult element. This is an area that I've written about a lot. In fact, I discuss it in my newest book, Woke and Weaponized, that I wrote with the founder of Classical Conversations. But the World Core Curriculum, which the UN says should be taught to every child in every school in every country, the guy who wrote it, Robert Mueller, said it is based on the teachings of Alice Bailey. Now, Alice Bailey, if you've heard of her, is the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company, and she claimed to be getting her insights from a spirit master she was channeling called Javal Kool. And one of the books she wrote was called Education in the New Age. And she says we're laying the foundation for the emergence of a new species of human being, a more highly evolved unit. Right? She says world citizenship is going to be the goal, with a world federation or world government and a world brain. And this was written, by the way, 70, 80 years ago. And they're talking about the world brain today. Here is Klaus Schwab again.
I just would like to highlight what you said about the European Chips Act, because it's an important step to create the physical brain for digitalization.
Yes, the physical brain for digitalization, right? And by the way, yes, this is in classrooms all over America. They're openly doing it. They're telling you. They've got AI now in every element of education. In 2019, all the governments of the world came together under the UN and adopted the Beijing Consensus on AI in education. And they all agreed governments must use AI in the classroom to shape children's values and attitudes. They're very proud of what they're doing here. Bill Gates has said recently AI will soon replace teachers. And Communist China is kind of at the forefront of putting this in the classroom. This is what it looks like.
红色是表示你的专注力显示得很高。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了。
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence.
So, and again, and this is coming here, by the way, folks, don't kid yourselves. 2012, the U.S. government was bragging about the facial expression cameras they were using in federal education programs. They were bragging that using all this data they're harvesting from your children, they'll be able to make predictions about their future behaviors and beliefs and performance. And they've been working on this again for many, many years. It is coming through the school system. They are preparing your children not just to like this or to accept this, but to embrace it, to love it. And of course, there's a very serious occult element, as I mentioned, but we're going to skip through that just in the interest of time. There's so much to talk about. I want to talk about another element of this too, and that's the gene editing component, right? That's a key part of the fourth industrial revolution, and Klaus Schwab is very clear about that too.
You see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has...
Yeah, if you take a genetic editing, it's you who are changed, right? It's the code that God wrote for you that is being edited. They've been able to do this for a long time now. They've got the CRISPR technology. They can literally edit genes. The co-inventor of this technology wrote a book, A Crack in Creation, and she says in there, her name is Jennifer Doudna, she says, humanity has unlocked the secret of creation and can now control evolution itself. With CRISPR, manipulating the code of life is as easy as editing a text with copy and paste. Folks, by the way, if you've been following the Epstein scandal, he was deeply involved in this research. He was funneling millions of dollars into exactly this kind of research. They call it directed evolution. They believe that they are going to, as Jennifer says here, take control of evolution itself. They believe they are going to be the masters of the universe. Back in 2018, Bill Gates of Hell wrote an article about this in Foreign Affairs, which I mentioned earlier. And he says, you know, it's not enough to just edit the genetic material of our crops, of our livestock. We've got to do our babies too. And he's actually quite proud of how they can deliver some of this technology through vaccines. So listen to him.
One final way that's new and is promising is called the RNA vaccine. With RNA and DNA, instead of putting that shape in, you put instructions in the code to make that shape. You put instructions in the code to make that shape.
Yeah, you put instructions in the code to make that shape. Oh, and by the way, vaccines we can use to reduce the population. Right, here's Bill Gates and his buddy Jeffrey Epstein, the child sex trafficker monster. Jeffrey Epstein was going to see the human race with his DNA. Right? They're openly bragging now about the idea of genetically engineering humans to do the things that they want. Here's one of these little guys.
So I'll give two examples. So one is that people eat too much meat. Right, and if they were to cut down on their consumption on meat, then they would it would actually really help the planet. But people are not willing to give up meat. Yeah, you know, some people will be willing to, but other people they may be willing to, but they have a weakness of will. They say, "Wow, this steak is just too juicy. I can't do it." I'm one of those, by the way. So you know, but so here's the thought, right? So it turns out that we know a lot about. So we have these intolerance to so I, for example, I have milk intolerance, and some people are intolerant to crayfish. So possibly we can use human engineering to make it.
We're going to use human engineering so that you can't eat steak. Okay, kind of creepy. And there is much more. Here is the top scientist at Moderna. You probably remember the name Moderna. We heard a lot about it because they forced people to take these injections from Pfizer and Moderna. Here he is talking about how they're going to hack the software of life. And by the way, they can already do this.
As I've trained as a physician scientist, we've been living this phenomenal digital and scientific revolution. And I'm here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease. So here's all the biology you need to know in 30 seconds. Our body is made out of organs. Our organs are made out of cells. And in every cell, there's this thing called messenger RNA, or mRNA for short, that transmits the critical information from the DNA, our genes, to the protein, which is really the stuff we're all made out of. This is the critical information that determines what a cell will actually do. And so we think of it like an operating system. And it's not just in every cell of our body, it's actually in every cell of every organism alive. It's the same thing. And so if you could actually change that, which we call the software of life, if you could introduce a line of code or change a line of code, it turns out
that has profound implications for everything.
So we're going to hack the software of life, right? And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's actually exactly what they did. Some of you probably remember Dr. Peter McCullough. I first interviewed him early in 2021 when they were rolling out these so-called vaccines, these injections. And I kind of became friends with him over the years, and so regularly had him on the program to discuss. And this is what he said about the latest research. This was just a couple of years ago now that was coming out about these genetic altering injections.
There's been a paper published from Malmö, Sweden. Senior author is Yang D. Marinis, that showed that the genetic code for Pfizer gets installed into the human nucleus of a hepatoma cell line very rapidly, within a few hours. And experts believe the entire code is actually installed into the human genome. This paper has not been challenged by any other lab. We're looking for confirmation, but this is disturbing now. Since the messenger RNA for Pfizer, in a study done by Stanford, by Rolkin and colleagues, is permanently in the lymph nodes, at least as far as they've looked for several months now. So the genetic code, once people take these vaccines, is long-lasting. It may indeed get into the nucleus, change the human genome, and then pass down to daughter cells. That means that this could actually be passed down to the progeny of vaccinated young parents. There couldn't be worse news right now. We are hoping this vaccine would be in and out of the body. It looks like it's long-lasting, causing a tremendous amount of damage.
No, there you have it, folks. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they've already started rolling out these technologies on the population without our consent, without our permission. Here's some of what they're proud that they're doing. They're creating babies with DNA from 3 parents. They're fusing human DNA and mouse DNA and creating freakish creatures that are part human, part animal. They're developing super soldiers, and apparently we are going to save our species through transhumanism. We're going to move beyond what the Guardian calls our ape-brained meat sacks. That would be the physical bodies that God gave us. And ultimately, we're probably going to end up eradicating humans altogether, according to Yuval Noah Harari. Listen.
So it is very likely that within a century or two, Homo sapiens, as we've known it for thousands of years, will disappear. Not because, like in some...
So, humans will disappear, okay? We're going to become God. We're going to live forever. Here's little Bethany from Years and Years, the BBC propaganda show that has been seen by 100 million children around the world.
I want to live forever as information, because that's what transhumans are, Mum. Not male or female, better. Where I'm going, there's no life or death. There's only data. I will be data.
She's not surely going to die. She is going to live forever, right? As data, whatever that means. Here's Peter Thiel. You may recognize this guy, the founder of Palantir, the company that is now working with the government to steal all your data and process it through AI. He's very interested in young people's blood. He injects it into himself. He thinks it keeps him young. He's an active practicing homosexual, and he's also a big-time transhumanist.
Yeah, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
An immortal body. That sounds exciting, right? Elon Musk has some thoughts on that.
Could you imagine that one day we would be able to download our human brain capacity into a Optimus?
Yes. I think that is, I'm not saying this is, I think it is possible, I think, to do that. It is possible.
Which would be a different way of eternal life, because we would also download our personalities into a body.
Yes.
A different way to eternal life. Forget Jesus Christ, right? This is literally a false gospel, right? We're going to become more like God, though, says the chief of engineering at Google, Ray Kurzweil.
So it's moving in the direction that God has been described as having these qualities without limit. And so I think evolution is a spiritual process and makes us more godlike. And there is beauty and love and creativity, intelligence in the world. It all comes from the neocortex. And we're going to be able to expand the neocortex as I described. So we're going to become more godlike.
We're going to become more godlike. Wow, isn't that exciting? We're actually going to build God. Check it out.
So does God exist? Well, I would say not yet.
Not yet. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Now back to Yuval Noah Harari. His book from a few years ago is called Homo Deus. Right, we are supposedly Homo sapiens. We're going to move from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus, which is man God. And that's what he argues in this book, right? Which, by the way, has been endorsed by Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, the little fascist who runs Facebook, Bill Gates of Hell, the World Economic Forum, Angela Merkel, all the rest of them. Here's what he thinks about Jesus, just for a reference.
I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
Wait. This is fake news, okay? Jesus is fake news. The real news is...
Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods.
Upgrading humans into gods. You guys, being scholars of Genesis, probably recognize some of this foolishness. If you go to Genesis chapter 3, starting in verse 4, the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God." Isn't that interesting? These people are literally parroting the oldest lie in the book, and I think genuinely some of them believe this. Some of them believe they are going to have eternal life by downloading their brain to a computer chip and sticking it in one of Elon Musk's robots. Some of them believe that they're going to become like gods. They're going to have powers of creative and power and destruction. But Yuval Noah Harari actually takes it a step further. They are going to be evolving into gods that are far superior to our puny little god of the Bible, okay? Because all he could do was create organic life. They're going to do something far greater. Listen.
Because even if you believe the Bible, the only thing God managed to create are organic beings. All these trees and giraffes and humans, they are just organic. But we are now trying to create inorganic entities, inorganic life forms, cyborgs, artificial intelligence, and so forth. If we succeed, and there is a very good chance we will, then very soon we will be beyond the God of the Bible.
I'm going to be beyond the God of the Bible. Yeah, so let me know how that works out, Mr. Harari. But folks, we need to go back to the scriptures to see what's really going on here, right? The God of this world, being Satan, has blinded the minds of these people, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them, right? The whole world, 1 John chapter 5 says, lies in the power of the evil one. So the bad news is these people are all doomed. It's very easy to judge them. But the reality is we were all in the same boat, headed to the same destination as they are, until we came to know the Lord, until we accepted Jesus Christ as our Savior. And so the good news is God sent his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins, to reconcile us to God, so that we could be adopted into God's family. And he can do the same for these weirdo transhumanists, but they need to repent of this wickedness. They need to stop it. And so we need to get serious about the Great Commission. We need to go make disciples of all nations. We need to baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And of course, we need to teach them to observe all that God has commanded us. So just a couple thoughts on what we do here. Well, I would say, for one, we got to avoid the false solutions, right? Some of them are telling us we need a world government to control AI. Nope. They're telling us we need universal basic income because AI is going to take all our jobs. Nope. Thank you. I don't want to be dependent on these maniacs. What we do need to do is turn off the TV, right? Stop subjecting yourself and your family to this psychological terrorism masquerading as entertainment. Boycott big tech to the biggest extent possible, right? And I know for some of you that may not be feasible, but I'll tell you what, I haven't used Google in years. Not one single Google thing. I don't use Google Maps. I don't use Google Mail. I don't use Google search engine. I don't use Google for anything. They are a wicked, evil corporation that's at the cutting edge of this foolishness, and I will not support them. I will not give them my data, period. There are some great alternatives. I would encourage you to make sure you're getting access to good information. I serve as senior editor of the New American Magazine. We've been exposing this stuff for many, many years. My personal ministry company is Liberty Sentinel. You can find us at libertysentinel.org. And if you want our free newsletter, just take a picture of this. It's libertysentinel.org/subscribe. We'll never sell your email address. We send out 2 to 3 emails per week with information on the most important things happening in the world: education, climate change, geopolitics, transhumanism, all the different issues that are so important that you're not going to hear from the fake media. I've written some books on this, and one of the things I would say is the most important thing you could probably do as a Christian is just follow God's commands when it comes to the discipleship of your children. Children all across America and all over the world really are being groomed right now to embrace this wicked trend of transhumanism. It's happening right in front of parents' noses. They don't realize it. They're being groomed for transgenderism, which is, of course, the step before transhumanism. If you can transcend your gender, right? Forget whether God created you male or female. Well, why can't you transcend your very humanity and become something better? So I've written a lot of books on this. Crimes of the Educators, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death came out last year. It was endorsed by our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and many other great Americans. My newest one is Woke and Weaponized, just came out this year, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education and How We Can Win It Back. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this issue because if we don't do what God told us to do when it comes to the raising and educating and discipleship of our children, we're going to lose them to the culture, to the world, and ultimately to the devil. So my wife and I, we homeschool. We wouldn't trade it for the world. We do classical conversations. We've got 6 precious little children that God has blessed us with. And we really need to rethink education from the bottom up, right? The purpose of education, as Classical Conversation says, is to know God and make him known. It's not to get you a good job. It's not to earn you a lot of money. It's not to make you successful. It is ultimately to know God and make him known. And of course, as the Bible tells us, you seek first the kingdom of God, and all the rest, your food, your drink, everything you need, that's going to be added unto you, right? So these are some of the things that I think we really, really need to be taking seriously. What we're up against is quite literally demonic. As the scripture teaches in Ephesians 6, the Apostle Paul writing to the church at Ephesus, he says, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places." That is the nature of the battle, right? It's not Bill Gates and George Soros and Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, they're bad guys, yes. Klaus Schwab and the rest of the clown car. But what we're really up against here is actually spiritual, right? We're battling with forces and ideas and plots from the pit of hell. And to respond to that, we need to go to the scripture, right? Politics is good. That's important. But ultimately, this is not a political battle, right? What we need to do is we need to take the shield of faith. That's how we're going to quench the fiery darts of the wicked. We're going to take the helmet of salvation, and then our weapon in the battle, the sword of the Spirit, that is, of course, the Word of God. And so God has all the answers that we need to all of these questions. And if our Lord and our Savior and our King used this weapon, we certainly can and should as well. He is our example. You might remember in Matthew 4, Satan takes him up to a mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he says to Jesus, "All of these things I'll give you if you just fall down and worship me." And Jesus responds with, "Get thee hence, Satan. Why? For it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve." So Jesus Christ used the Bible as his weapon when engaged in battle against Satan and his demons. We must do the same, right? In Acts chapter 17, I love how enthusiastic the church was, right? They were going out and they actually caused, they turned the world upside down, it says in Acts 17, verse 6. And Jason received them, and they're all acting, what? Against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there's another king, King Jesus. And so I just want to leave you with Daniel chapter 3. I think we're going to need to practice this, right? We've been very blessed in the United States for centuries in that we could kind of obey the government and obey authority and obey God at the same time without much of a problem. But those days seem to be rapidly coming to a close. I don't know when they will come to a close, but I know that just a few years ago they were arresting pastors for having church. And so, the time is coming where we're going to have to learn to say no. And Daniel chapter 3 has a beautiful story. These Hebrew boys who are stuck in Babylon are ordered by Nebuchadnezzar to bow down to this big giant golden idol, right? When the music starts playing, they're supposed to bow down and worship that idol. And whoever refuses, the emperor says, the king says, is going to be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the Babylonian names of these Hebrew boys, they answer and say to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. I think most of you know the story, right? They get thrown in, the king gets really mad, they heat up the fire 7 times hotter, and even some of the soldiers get burned up throwing the guys in there. And then suddenly there is another in the fire, and Nebuchadnezzar says, hey, come on out of there. God sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and they changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. So God uses this righteous defiance by these faithful men to bring the most powerful man in the world to his senses. The king says, therefore I make a decree, every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. And that's a good reminder, folks. We know from Psalm 2, the nations rage, the kings of the earth, the rulers conspire together against the Lord and his anointed. But we also know how that ends, right? God is laughing at them. He's going to speak to them in his wrath, it says in Psalm 2. And he is going to install his son as king on Mount Zion. So be warned, O kings, O rulers of the earth, serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. But remember, folks, if God is for us, who can be against us, right? I love what Paul said to the church in Rome. In chapter 16, he says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. That was true then, as the gospel was going forth through Europe and Asia Minor. And it is true again, God will crush Satan under our feet. Remember, God's going to make his enemies into his footstool, and the gates of hell will never prevail against the church. In fact, every knee is going to bow, every tongue is going to confess, and God is already victorious, ladies and gentlemen. So we can rejoice even in the midst of all this craziness and foolishness. They're not going to be able to get their little transhumanist Tower of Babel, at least not for long. And so we just need to be faithful to what the Lord has commanded us to do. And that's all I have for you today. We can take some questions, I think, if Ross would like.
Hello. It seems like President Trump is currently working on dismantling monopolies and financial cartels, aiming to restore American sovereignty. What impact do you think that is going to have on transhumanism or the development or even the central bank, all of what Charles Schwab and those other guys were saying? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. It's hard to know exactly where this is going. I have supported a lot of what Donald Trump has done in several major policy areas, but on some of these technology issues, he has basically given free rein to the technocrats and the transhumanists. Peter Thiel, who I actually showed a brief clip of, is actually pretty close to the administration. He was one of the major financiers, actually the major financier of J.D. Vance's Senate campaign. He's got a lot of influence at the White House. I don't know if you guys remember that press conference that Trump held with, Larry Ellison, the guy from Oracle, where they talked about a $500 billion so-called investment from the U.S. government in this AI system that, according to Larry Ellison, was going to create personalized mRNA concoctions to cure each of our cancers. So I don't think Trump understands this, to be quite honest. I think his heart's in the right place on a lot of these issues. He wants to stop globalism. He's trying to reverse the mass migration. I think he really does love America. But my understanding, and I know some of the people who work for him pretty well, is that he is being told that unless we allow the AI and the big tech bros and all these guys to kind of have free reign and do whatever they want, then the communist Chinese are going to overtake us, and then they're going to use all this for military purposes, and we're going to all end up either slaves to the Chi-Coms or dead. I don't want to discount the danger from the Chinese Communist Party. It's very real. I've spent 20 years exposing them and trying to understand what's happening there. But I'm concerned that Trump is not just allowing some of this transhumanist silliness to proceed, but is actually in some ways paving the way for them to gain even more power. So we'll have to see. I think we're commanded to pray for our leaders, and Trump is certainly trying to do a lot of good things. I was delighted to hear that on May 17th we're going to be rededicating our nation to God. Like I said, I know a lot of the people in his administration. I've had probably half of his cabinet on my show, but I do have some concerns about his policies when it comes to some of these issues. And I'll give you another clear example. He signed an executive order last month, I believe, that purports to prohibit any kind of regulation on AI from state governments. First of all, I think that's plainly unconstitutional. The president doesn't have the power to use a pen to prohibit states from implementing common sense regulations to protect our children and ourselves. But second of all, I think it's deeply unwise. And so yeah, we'll see. It's been kind of a mixed bag. I can't imagine Trump wants to see this kind of transhumanist nightmare, but my guess is he doesn't have the first clue about where these people are heading. And I hope he'll listen to some people who can bring him up to speed on this. I'm not confident that David Sachs, his current AI czar, is the guy for the job.
My question is a little bit related to that. At the World Economic Forum conference, President Milei gave an absolutely fascinating discussion on classical economics, and it seemed like all the world leaders were being schooled by him, and it seemed like it was an opportunity for the world community to take a giant step backwards and actually schooling Donald Trump in many ways in his positions. And I was just wondering if you had a chance to catch that and what your remarks might be regarding that.
I did see a lot of Javier Milei's speech. I'm a big fan, actually. One of the things that I thought that he said that was most important is, we have to go back to the values that made the West great, and in particular, he cited Christianity as the example. Now, that's not the saving gospel of Jesus Christ, but it is true that all of society would benefit, even the unbelievers and the haters and the pagans would benefit from living in a society based on Christian moral principles and biblical mandates. So I like Javier Milei a lot. I tend to agree with his philosophy of government. The smaller the government, the better. The purpose of government, the Bible tells us, to punish evil. It's not to micromanage our lives, educate our children, give us free health care, none of those things. So I like Javier Milei a lot. And I was encouraged to see him speak out at the World Economic Forum. I was encouraged to see Donald Trump speak out at the World Economic Forum against some of these policies and agendas. So that was encouraging. But at the same time that we heard a lot of that really wonderful stuff, we also heard, to kind of counterbalance that, a lot of very frightening ideas. Like, for example, if you listened to the French president, Emmanuel Macron, very deeply connected to kind of the world that Epstein was involved in. He was talking about some very troubling things. If you listen to the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, talking about the shift away from the unipolar world order dominated by the United States to this new multipolar world order, that was very troubling as well. But I've been very pleased to see Trump and Milei and others, Viktor Orban in Hungary, to name a few, taking some opportunities to school other governments. I don't know if you guys caught Donald Trump's speech at the UN General Assembly last year. It was in September. But he told them right to their face, this climate change thing, he called it the biggest con job in the history of humanity. He said the mass immigration was designed to destroy our countries, that both were being facilitated by the UN. He was exactly right. So I'm encouraged by some of the trends that we're seeing, some of the resistance that we're seeing to at least what used to seem like a monolithic, almost overwhelming push for global tyranny and the transhumanism and the anti-God agendas. But we're still a long way from being out of the woods, I guess I would say.